Part of the verse, it says, and he stretched out the heavens like a curtain. I thought, wow, this is amazing that God stretched out the heavens. And sure enough, looking at science, you can see that there's the expansion of the universe. Scientists believe that the universe is expanding. I thought, wow, this is amazing scientific accuracy here in the Bible. Mainly what I was doing is just pouring modern day science back into the Bible and not understanding ancient Near Eastern context that it was in.
Everyone's heard about the advanced scientific knowledge in the Bible. Is that really true? Is there advanced scientific knowledge? Or is it actually very ancient? Today we're going to be talking about that exact topic with Dr. Stephen Meyers. How are you doing today, Dr. Meyers?
Doing good. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. It is a pleasure to have you. Can you give us just a little bit about your background here?
Well, I'll start from the beginning. I was born in Cleveland, Ohio. I had wonderful, loving parents who would take me to a fundamentalist Baptist church every Sunday morning, Sunday evening, Wednesday night. And at age 8, I accepted Jesus as my Savior, and a few years later, baptized. And this was the time of the 60s. So I was interested in science. I was interested in the great space race to see who would be the first one to get to the moon. And so all this science here, and I came across some books about science in the Bible and how there was amazing science that was in the Bible. And I thought, oh, wow, this is great. This is fantastic. In high school, I met a Jehovah's Witness, and he told me, well, the Greek says Jesus is just a God. He's not God, he's just a God. And he'd bring out his Greek interlinear and show me, there it is, there's no article. And so from that encounter, I knew I needed to go to a college, a Bible college, and study Hebrew and Greek so I'd know what it would say for myself, and I could answer these questions. I went to Baptist Bible College, that's in Clark Summit, Pennsylvania. Then I went to Tennessee Temple University, Temple Baptist Theological Seminary. I went to Westminster Theological Seminary, Liberty University, and another one, Trinity in Florida. So I've been around to a number of schools, all fundamentalist or very conservative. So I went to Bible college and on to seminary. And one course I had was translating Isaiah. And we had to do a project, so I picked out Isaiah 40, verse 22, if I remember correctly. And it talks about the circle of the earth. And I thought, wow, this is amazing, the circle of the earth. I knew that before. But that same Hebrew word also is used for the circle of the sea and the circle of the heavens. I thought, wow, this is amazing. The whole universe is a huge sphere. Then later, the next part of the verse, it says, and he stretched out the heavens like a curtain. I thought, wow, this is amazing that God stretched out the heavens. And sure enough, looking at science, you can see that there's the expansion of the universe. Scientists believe that the universe is expanding. I thought, wow, this is amazing scientific accuracy here in the Bible. But mainly what I was doing is just pouring modern day science back into the Bible and not understanding the context and the ancient Near Eastern context that it was in. Later on, I went studied classical Greek and found out a lot of these phrases that are considered like scientific ahead of the time were actually, you can find them in ancient Greek texts and also in other ancient languages. And it wasn't some modern day science, because they said the same thing back then, or very similar. Second Timothy 3:16 says all inspiration is given by God for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, and instruction in righteousness. And I think we need to take that it's instruction in righteousness. It's not instruction in biology, geology, astronomy. It says instruction in righteousness. It's a spiritual book and teaching us spiritual things, not trying to teach modern science. And so I think if we want to take that literally, what it says, then we shouldn't try to put modern science in the Bible. It wasn't meant to be that way. A lot of these passages are poetic and not meant to be taken as science. Like one of the passages is like the hills will clap for joy, something like that. It's not talking that that's literally going to happen. It's poetic phrases here. A lot of these are poetic phrases describing how they saw the universe back then, and not scientific theories and scientific evidence.
You also have a museum and a website. Can you talk a little bit about that?
The website is bibleandscience.com, all one word there, and put up a number of writings on there and different topics that you can go and see. And there are some courses up there as well for free. Also have like a small little museum, and that's at BibleHistoryExhibits.com. And I've been collecting things for a number of years, and have a small exhibit about the key archaeological finds of the Old Testament and the New Testament, as well as church history.
Okay, cool. So, first of all, I wanted to talk about, like, okay, why do we people believe these types of things? Obviously, the verses, a lot of the verses match up in regards to, you read a text, and then you read the Bible, and then it reminds us of, future scientific things that we have today, ocean currents they might not have known about, the circularity of the earth. A lot of those things remind us today, so it makes perfect sense to think that the Bible, who is supposed to be, what it's supposed to be, an expired text from God, it makes sense that we would have these scientific facts in there, that could help us have more reasons to believe in God. Of course, God wants us to believe in Him, so of course He would put those in there. But you don't actually think that there are scientific facts. At the same time, you're also not trying to, remove reasons for people to believe in Christianity. Like, you're not trying to destroy people's faith. And I do appreciate your demeanor about that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I think if you're trying to make it a science book, you're going to be very disappointed and move away from Christianity. So I think it's important to understand that the Bible is not a science book, and it doesn't have science in it. If you do try to make it a science book, you're going to end up with the wrong answers.
Yeah, for me, this discussion is very important because what you have is you have a lot of people out there that, they do think that there are scientific reasons to believe in the Bible. Think about Muslims, a lot of them that you talk to is, why are you a Muslim? Oh, because there's advanced scientific knowledge. And, we as Christians, we don't think those are good reasons. And, most of us, at least, we talk to them, we show them that they're not actually good reasons. That might be a reason for them to doubt their faith in the Quran, in Muhammad. But at the same time, We don't want to be in that situation as Christians. We want to make sure that the reasons we believe in Christianity are good reasons, and there are good reasons to believe in Christianity. We have Jesus' resurrection. The best evidence is the one that holds the faith together is that Jesus rose from the dead. We have really good evidence for that, and that's awesome. We can verify it from a historical perspective, so that's great. Now, so yeah. I just wanted to make that clear that we're not trying to destroy people's faith here. We're trying to figure out what the Bible really says about these topics. So, can you talk about your 5 reasons why you don't think there is advanced scientific knowledge in the Bible?
Okay, I wrote about this and it's on my website here. I believe the first one here, what I was doing, I was putting modern day science back into the Bible when you need to look at the Bible and what it says in the original language and Near Eastern context, uh, instead of pouring modern science back into it, and just see what the Bible says for itself there. Um, second objection is a lot of these phrases are just common phrases that were used back then at that time. And another third objection is a number of these verses are just poetic expressions that are being used. And the fourth one is a number of these verses are based on poor translations of certain words. For example, the unicorn is mentioned in the King James Bible. And so a lot of people think that there are real unicorns running around somewhere. But in the Hebrew, it means wild ox. It has nothing to do with a unicorn. And that was an unfortunate translation, mainly from the Latin, I believe. So we have to be careful of that, just the translation. And the final objection that the Bible, I said before, is not a science book, but it's meant for instruction in righteousness.
Awesome. Okay, I appreciate you saying that. So, what I would say is an additional reasons why I think that we should be hesitant before even going into this conversation is while there are good reasons to think that God might put scientific evidence in the Bible like that, but at the same time, there are some reasons that might cause us to not think that there is scientific evidence before we even look at it. For one, the Israelites struggled with believing in multiple gods. Now, if God, the God of the Israelites would have put advanced scientific knowledge in the Bible, that would have caused a contradiction in their beliefs because they have a specific set of beliefs and they're already struggling with, worshiping other deities. They're already struggling with accepting the truth of God. But then if God puts scientific knowledge in, that contradicts, and that's an additional reason not to believe in. Why would God want to prevent someone from believing in him unless there's a really good reason to do so? In addition, most advanced scientific facts found in the Bible would be useless or unverifiable for them for like 3,000 years. They wouldn't have been able to verify most of it until many years later. That sounds like an unnecessary reason to make them not think that God's word is inspired. So for us today, it might be a reason to believe that God's word is inspired, but for them, it's actually the opposite because it's a hindrance to their faith, and they wouldn't even be able to verify it. Other nations would see them as, they believe that, the earth is a globe. They believe, and, hypothetically speaking, like quantum mechanics or something like that, if we see that in the Bible, another person saying that, and from a different nation back then would have been like, what? That's crazy. Why would you ever believe that? That's ridiculous. And finally, what I want to say is that when we're talking about like how we conclude if there is advanced scientific knowledge in the Bible, you have to say that it's not just possible, that it is actually the best explanation. Now, that's if you want to say that, there is scientific knowledge in the Bible. Now, maybe you want to say that there might be, and that's okay. It's always possible. But we have to make like an actual argument. You can't just point to a verse and say, "Oh, that must have been, what they believed or whatever." You have to show from the text why your interpretation that there is advanced scientific knowledge in the Bible, why that is the best one. You can't just, assert what you want it to be true. In addition, I've met many Christians that what will happen is they're given evidence for, they're given a reason to believe in Christianity. There are some arguments that make perfect sense the first time you hear it, and then once you hear the rebuttal or the critique of it, you're like, "Oh no, that's not a good argument." And I know a lot of Christians that have gone in these types of experiences where they're given a reason to believe in Christianity, and it might not be very good. And what'll happen is they'll go through life and they might come across someone that doesn't believe in Christianity, and they might, the said person will be like, "Hey, this is why I believe in Christianity because, something like there's scientific evidence in the Bible." Well, this other person, this person that's not a Christian, they'll be like, "No, that is not scientific evidence in the Bible. That's obviously," and then they'll give their reasons, and from my point of view, like, I don't think that there's scientific evidence in the Bible. And so what'll happen is they'll be like, excuse me, that's not scientific evidence, and they'll change their mind. And the issue is that was why they were a Christian to begin with. And if that's why they're a big Christian, if that's why they're a Christian, that's a big reason to doubt your faith. And that's not what we want here. We don't want. That's actually the opposite. So you might think that we're trying to, ruin people's faith, and that's actually the opposite. We want to protect it. We want to make sure that the people that are accessing our content really have great reasons to believe in Christianity, and that's one of the reasons why I have this channel. So, anyways, let's get into it. Let's start talking about these verses. Okay, so Psalm 18:15, it says, "The valleys of the sea were exposed, and the foundations of the earth laid bare. At your rebuke, Lord, at the blast of breath from your nostrils." And, this seems to be saying that, there's an ocean floor with deep channels and canyons that they would have no idea about. The ancient Israelites would have had no idea about these deep ocean floors and deep channels without God's inspiration, without this verse. So, what makes you think that there's a better interpretation for this verse here?
No, I don't think it's talking about deep channels and canyons at the bottom of the ocean. Uh, uh, what I want to point out is there's similar phrases like this in Ugaritic, and in maybe I tell about it in about 1928. A farmer was plowing. This would be northern Syria, and he hit something and discovered a tomb there, and called other archaeologists to come and investigate, and they found there was a whole city, and they excavated that city and found a number of clay tablets there. Uh, and because of the name of the city, they named it Ugaritic, and it's very, very similar to Hebrew. So if you don't know a word in Hebrew, you might find its meaning in Ugaritic. And there's a whole book translating a lot of these religious tablets that tell stories about Baal and about El. And of course, we have Elijah confronting the prophets of Baal. So this is a very important discovery. And for this phrase here, it's found in Ugaritic, and it's not talking about deep channels they knew nothing about, but just regular channels of the Sea of Galilee. You have the Dead Sea, the channels of the waters there, not way down in the deep sea, which they would know nothing about like we do today.
Okay, so clarification question. So, you said that they wouldn't have known that the sea was deep and they would have no ability to, you know, be able to go under the water like that. So, why can't we say that? they have this knowledge about this verse about these deep currents in the sea because God gave it to them, because this text is inspired and this is how they know.
Well, it'd be very strange in having that in Ugaritic written way before this was written in the Bible. Uh, so maybe God came uh, to those at Ugarit and told them this. Uh, this is like at least like 300 years before the Psalms were written, at least. So you have to explain how did they know about it way before the psalmist, unless he's getting it from them. So it doesn't make uh, that much sense to say this is scientific when it occurs in other languages way before the psalmist wrote.
Yeah, it's really interesting that we would have these pagan texts, these non-Christian texts, these non-Israelite texts, and they have, what seems to be maybe like scientific evidence, but obviously they didn't get it from God. So maybe, and yeah, it seems like you're saying that, if they have these other texts and they didn't get it from God, then it must have been something else. It must have been some common knowledge back then. Okay, let's go to Ecclesiastes. We have Ecclesiastes 1:7. It says, all streams flow into the sea, yet the sea is never full. To the place the streams come from, where they return again. And this seems to be talking about, well, it seems very similar to the hydraulic system. Can you talk about whether you think that's here in the Bible?
Well, this is common knowledge. This is in ancient Greek texts and other texts that they all knew about this, that water would flow into the oceans and it wouldn't get bigger. So this seems like it's more common knowledge back then because very similar quotes you have in uh, ancient Greek writers. So I don't think we can use this as scientific knowledge. Uh, they just understood that's the way things were.
Okay, next we have Job 8:28-25. It says, when he established the force of the wind and measured out the waters. And this seems to be talking this seems to be very similar to what we think of as atmospheric pressure, something that they would have had, no idea about. Force of the wind, measuring the waters.
Well, I think it's just that this is just a poetic language in describing um, the wind, the force of the wind. I think that makes a lot more sense, the force and power of the wind, than saying this is atmospheric pressure. It makes common sense back then to ancient people, so you can feel the force of the wind in your face, and and everyone knew that. And I think that's what it's talking about, and not to assume something far advanced scientific. This is just poetry, uh, and you can find that all through other languages, the force of the wind.
Okay, next let's talk about Job 38:14. It says, the earth takes shape like clay under a seal. Its features stand out like those of a garment.
I think it's a total misunderstanding of the verse. Uh, the the earth, or it's referring to it as the clay. It's not referring to it as the seal. The earth is the clay, which doesn't move. But if you have a cylinder seal, it will move over the clay, or it may be a stamp seal. He's referring to it. You just stamp it on the clay. But the earth here is the clay. It's not doing any moving at all. Uh, and I think this is a misunderstanding of it. And I think some translate it a little bit better there. It's and the NIV says the earth takes shape like clay under a seal. There is no pottery wheel here where things are spinning around, uh, but it's just a regular you have some clay, and then you stamp it with a stamp seal or a cylinder seal, and has nothing to do with the rotation of the earth.
Okay, yeah, awesome. Okay, so the next one we have is 1 Corinthians 15:41. It says, "The sun has one kind of splendor, the moon another, and the stars another, and star differs from star in splendor." And this seems to be describing how these stars in the sky, they're extremely different. You have really big ones, you have small ones. Uh, why? I mean, this seems to be describing that. So, they shouldn't have had this knowledge. Why would you think that otherwise? That we should interpret otherwise?
Well, I think you can just look up into the sky and you can see that the sun is brighter than the moon, and you can see stars that are different. Some are very bright, some are very dim, some they look a little different colors. So you could, just by looking up in the sky yourself, you can see that there are differences. You don't need modern science to tell you that.
Yeah, this is an odd one, and obviously, even today, we can realize that different stars are brighter. That doesn't seem like crazy knowledge to have. Okay, yeah, so let's go to Psalm 19:6. It says, "It rises at one end of the heavens and makes its circuit to the other. Nothing is deprived of its warmth." And this seems to be very similar to, the sun's gigantic orbit around the center of the Milky Way galaxy. You have, it makes its circuit to another. That makes perfect sense. Why don't you think this is about, the how the sun goes across the sky like that?
Well, you can see the sun, rising in the east and going overhead and then going down in the west. So I think this is just the common knowledge that you can see the sun making a circuit. In ancient times, they believed that it would uh, like go underneath the earth and caverns and come back up on the other side. Uh, Especially the Egyptians. Uh, and I think it's just looking at that. Um, Everyone knew that the sun rises and the sun sets. Now, when Copernicus came along, uh, a radical idea that the sun wasn't going around the earth, but the earth was going around the sun. Uh, this was a tremendous upset. And the church, the Catholic Church, was all upset about this idea. Um, uh, and even the reformers were upset about this as well. Um, and Martin Luther, let's see if I can, what he says. Yes, he says about Copernicus, the fool Copernicus would overturn all of astronomy. In the Holy Scriptures, we read that Joshua ordained the sun to stand still, not the earth. And then Copernicus replies, to attack me by twisting a passage from Scripture is to resort is the resort of one who claims judgment upon things he does not understand. Uh, so back then, they just thought the sun went around the earth. Geocentricity. Uh, Ecclesiastes 1:5, the sun also rises and the sun goeth down. Um, and then Joshua 10:13, so the sun stood still in the midst of the day of heaven. Now that's while they would see it, the sun stopping still, where we might say the earth slowed down in its rotation. And then Psalm 93:1, the world also is established that it cannot be moved. So even the early reformers were against geocentricity. And I think it's just they're looking at the sun rising and setting, not going around the Milky Way galaxy, which they knew nothing about.
Yeah, I also, you in your article, you also mentioned the Egyptian coffin text saying "Ora, Ora." May he who is in his evening be gracious to me when we have made the circuit of heaven. The sun god, the circuit of heaven, going across the sky. Okay, yeah. So yeah, this one, these all these verses seem to be saying that the earth is round. So let's talk about that. Isaiah 40:22. We have Proverbs 8:27, Job 26:10. I'll just read from one of them. They say mostly the same thing. It says, he sits enthroned above the circle of the earth, and his people are like grasshoppers. He stretches out the heavens like a canopy and spreads them out like a tent to live in. Oh, another one, sure. When he prepared the heavens, I was there. When he drew a circle on the face of the deep. So why aren't these, describing how the earth is a globe?
I think it's a completely misunderstanding of the verse here. And back then, they thought the earth was a circle. Let me just show you. I don't know if you can see this. This is an ancient Babylonian tablet, a replica, and it has the circle of the earth on it, and then the circle of the sea going around that. And this is like 500 BC. So in ancient times, they thought the earth was a circle, and that the sea was a circle surrounding the earth. But I don't think this is talking about that at all. It's talking about most modern translations may say the dome. He sitteth upon the dome of the earth, because this is Hebrew poetry. So a lot of times the second verse is giving more explanation than the first verse. And so it's saying it's like a tent. So they thought the sky was like a tent. And that's why we think that the first part of the verse, it's referring to the dome of the earth. And looking down and seeing people like grasshoppers. If you're right on the earth here, people don't look like grasshoppers. You have to be high up for them to look like grasshoppers. So I think in parallel, Hebrew parallelism, it's another way of saying it's like a tent. The sky is like a tent or vault over the earth, and not having anything to do with the earth being circular or spherical at all.
Okay, let's talk about Job 26:7. It says, he spreads out the northern skies over empty space. He suspends the earth over nothing. This seems to be talking about how the earth is suspended in space. There's no way they would have known this. They're ancient writers. They had no idea that the earth would have been, suspended in space like that. How do you explain this passage here?
The other part of the verse is stretching out the heavens like a tent there. And it's not talking about the expansion of the universe that they knew nothing about, but that's how they thought it was, that the heavens were stretched out like a tent. I may want to mention also that some of these same phrases are in the Quran. There's a book out, I think in the 90s, very popular, that saying the phrases of the Quran are amazingly scientific accurate when they're just pouring modern science back into it and has nothing to do with what they're saying about it. Because it does also mention that the earth is stretched out like a carpet. Of course, some take that to mean that the earth was flat as well. I think it's a misunderstanding. I think the northern skies here is like a part referring to the whole sky. And it's the word nothing. We get the same word in Genesis 2, I think, thuhum. the watery deep. Uh, so he's stretching out the earth over the watery deep that you have in Genesis 1. Uh, and there's other verses that talk about spreading out the earth or suspending the earth over the deep. So they thought there was water all underneath the earth. You not only have the oceans, but if you dig a well, if you dig down to the earth, you're going to hit a well. And so they thought, yes, there is water underneath the earth as well, and that God spread out and stretched out the earth over the deep, and it's suspended over the deep. And so I don't think this has nothing to do with outer space and that the earth is in outer space, but that it was spread out over the deep. You have other passages like this. And also, he stretched out the heavens like a tent. So I think it has nothing to do with the modern science that they say it does. This is how they would understand it back then.
Yeah, I really like in your article you said, and referring to the Numeration, it says the great structure, Ihara, which is the earth, which he made as a canopy over the deep. You said this earth is seen as a canopy that stretches out over the ocean. And then you have a hymn says, the sun god, climb to the mountains surveying the earth. You suspend from the heavens the circle of the lands. And you say these are just common phrases that were used in the ancient world. We shouldn't read, modern science back into text. Which, of course, I could see someone saying, okay, well, Job is the earliest book of the Bible. It's before these other texts, these, the Egyptian, Babylonian texts. To that, I would say, we have an extremely small amount of texts where we see texts outside the Bible quoting from the Old Testament. We don't have any reason to think they even knew an Old Testament existed. It would be very odd for these other texts to be copying from the Bible, even if they were written later. And the reason is because they're paving texts. They don't believe that the God of the Bible existed, that he was real. They have no reason to... We don't even know if they knew the Old Testament existed, or Job in particular. Okay, so anyways, let's go on. We have scientists didn't know that there was life in the blood until the 1700s. But then in Leviticus 17:11, it says, "For the life of a creature is in the blood, and I have given it to you to make atonement for yourselves on the altar. It is the blood that makes atonement for one's life." So we have life's in the blood, but these people, they didn't know that back then. So how do you explain that unless of it's scientific evidence?
Well, I think this is just like another common knowledge that if somebody stabs you and you bleed out, you're going to die. Uh, and there's other references, even before the Bible was written, about the life is in the blood, and even in the making of man, they used in Imel Elish the uh, blood. So you can see it uh, used in different languages. It's just common knowledge that if you bleed, you'll die. If you don't bleed out, you're going to live. And I think this is just common knowledge back then, not some amazing science.
Okay, fine. Maybe not that one, but what about, how it talks about quarantining, something they shouldn't have known until like the 17th century. Leviticus 13:46 says, as long as they have the disease, they remain unclean. They must live alone. They must live outside the camp. We have, they don't know about the germs back then. How would they know this without God giving them scientific knowledge to help them live better?
Well, I think they did that back in ancient times as well. For leopards, you had to stay away from the leopards, uh, and I think this is another common knowledge that they knew, and not that they knew the scientific evidence behind it, but if someone's sick or leprosy or something contagious, you stay away from them. So I think just another example of this.
So yeah, anyways, this has been awesome. I've gotten a lot out of this myself. I hope people on the stream did. Is there any last words you want to say before we get going here?
I think just 2 Timothy 3:16 that all Scripture is given by inspiration of God, and it's for instruction in righteousness and not instruction in science. And so I think we, instead of spending all your time trying to find scientific knowledge, spend it on instruction in righteousness instead. I have BibleandScience.com. You can go there. Uh, and also, a number of books and articles are on academia. I don't know if it's .com or .org, but they're also up on there that you can just download the different books I've written. And also, we have a little museum near Lancaster, Pennsylvania. A lot of people come and see Sight and Sound where we are here, if you've heard of that. And they also stop by and see our little museum at BibleHistoryExhibits.com. And thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, yes. Please, everyone, go check out Dr. Meyers' work here on his website, on his like academia.edu page. Definitely make sure to check out the museum if you're ever in town there. This has been awesome talking to you, Dr. Myers. I really hope you have a great rest of your night.